Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. In a week thick with geopolitics, the UK has found itself at the center of several global flashpoints, from reports of US nuclear weapons returning to British soil to a revealing meeting between Prime Minister Keir Starmer and US President Donald Trump in Scotland. At the same time, the UK Supreme Court issued a historic ruling rejecting an appeal by Russian billionaire Eugene Schwidler in what was the first major legal challenge to British sanctions post-Ukraine invasion. Now, to help us unpack these high-stakes developments, we welcome Dr. Przemysław Biskup, analyst for United Kingdom and Ireland, Polish Institute of International Affairs, here in the studio. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for the invitation.
I want to start off with the whole nuclear debate. Right now, we have this data. Do we actually know about the reported redeployment of nuclear weapons from the United States? How credible is this, and what does this signify for us?
Well, first of all, it signifies the new role the nuclear weapons will be playing in grand strategies of the US, but also the UK, and I would say the Western world in general. That is obviously in response to the many systematically repeated threats of use of nuclear weapons by Russia in the context of Ukraine. So nuclear deterrence became once again very important central point of strategy of any country, but especially of the nuclear powers. In case of US weapons on the British soil, they are mostly tactical weapons, and obviously that is even more so a direct response to Russian threats. Obviously, the nature of Russian threats was not about waging full-scale strategic nuclear war. It was much more about using them tactically to so-called to achieve so-called effect of de-escalation by escalation, by the means of escalation. So basically having similar capabilities based in Europe by the US is quite important to balance it out. In the context of Britain, what is extremely important is also the fact that the British government in their strategic defense review recently published, they decided to recreate the capabilities connected to tactical nuclear weapons carried by aeroplanes. And since Britain basically liquidated that type of assets in 1990s, their first move is basically to share some of the munitions with the Americans. So those American munitions based in Britain, they will be shared with the British, and for that purpose, Britain will be buying F-35s in an A version, which is certified to carry nuclear weapons.
You said this is something that is now coming out of the defense review. This is something, capacity that Britain didn't have up until now, coming back to it. I'm just wondering about how Trident fits into this, because Trident has been the nuclear deterrence for the UK. Does this mean that that's no longer sufficient? Are these connected in any way? How do you see that?
It's no longer sufficient in terms of, I would say, flexibility of use. Basically, Trident is at the moment the only nuclear weapons system used by the British, and it's strategic scale weapons system. So basically, even if you fire a single ballistic missile, you have multiple warheads on that missile, and each of them is of huge yield. So basically, you can't use this kind of. You not only cannot use those weapons without actually starting strategic nuclear exchanges, but because of that, you can't even threaten to use them. Whereas this psychological strength of the Russian side in last 2, 3, 4 years was that Russia still has at its disposal the whole escalation ladder of different nuclear weapons, starting from very low yield that could be used tactically, and that wouldn't necessarily provoke immediately a kind of very high level of escalation between especially US and Russia. So it's imaginable that they could have been used against Ukraine without actually attracting immediate and very negative response from the US. So to address that capability gap, both the US and the UK want to recreate their, let's say, tactical arsenals, it's good to remember that France, as the only other European nuclear power, they have never given up their tactical arsenal. They have always kept it. Britain had that arsenal throughout the Cold War until 1990s, and then basically it was gradually dismantled.
I say I think also it's going to be interesting for what that means for NATO posturing, but we'll have to look at another time. I want to stay
maybe one more thing. Obviously, among non-nuclear countries within NATO, there is the whole nuclear sharing program. That is, there is Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Italy participating, and Poland wants to join it. And that's basically, again, about tactical scale, nuclear weapons deployed mostly by air.
Well, so different elements there. I want to stay with the U.S. as well. I mean, there was a key summit as well in Scotland. I mean, it was seen as more informal, Trump and Starmer meeting. What are your main takeaways there? I mean, it wasn't very rich on substance.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, it was an informal summit, although I wouldn't say it was totally devoid of substance. So we know that Starmer wanted, for example, to discuss with Trump not just nuclear weapons, but also civilian energy, especially the SMRs, so-called small modular reactors. Britain is at the forefront of development of that technology with Canada and the US, and possibly India. Sorry, not India, but China. But obviously the Chinese developments are completely independent of the Western ones. And in case of nuclear, not just weapons, but energy, there is a lot of co-development and sharing of the expertise. So it was a big topic. Then we had the whole issue of AUKUS, if we stick to just a strategic agenda. And that program is, from British point of view, about Britain's presence in the Indo-Pacific, but it has huge military industrial component as well. Very important for the three countries, the UK, the US, and Australia. And that agreement is now being under review by the US. And among other important topics, you would also have the question of Palestine.
Right, so different things, as you said, not that it was devoid of any substance, but certainly a little bit different than perhaps some had expected. I want to get on another topic with the Supreme Court decision. According to the FT, Eugene Schwidler, this is an oligarch who's under sanctions, trying to overturn that. That failed in the Supreme Court in the UK, 4-1. What is the larger impact of that ruling? What does that mean also for sanction policy for the United Kingdom?
I would add that actually he's a naturalized British citizen, so that's also important. He's not, you could say, a person who is still totally alien to the British system. He's part of that system. And I would say the overall message is that Britain is really serious about sanctions. Because, they are sanctioning not just a Russian citizen, but also at the same time a British citizen. Specifically, as the court mentioned in the ruling, to prevent him from having a luxurious lifestyle on the basis of assets that were basically coming from different illicit actions. The court followed the decisions made by the Foreign Office, the Commonwealth and Development Office. And they agreed, the judges, that sanctions, to be effective, they have to be harsh. So we have a very clear, I would say, priority given to effectiveness of sanctions over individual rights, you could say human rights. That was Mr. Schwindler's, the essence of his legal reasoning in terms of defense, that it was basically attack against his individual human rights, and that's very important, because obviously, on the one hand, Britain is a country where there are a lot of Russian assets that can be frozen. So it's, in that context, it's extremely important. But it's also quite important for setting Britain as a kind of trendsetter for the wider global West. As a country that takes a rather hawkish approach to sanctions, especially personal sanctions, and because that unique position of Britain as a place of, let's say, huge investment coming from the countries of former Soviet Union, especially in late 1990s, early 2000s, that's very significant. You know, Polish sanctions to similar effect wouldn't be that important because we don't really have too many Russian assets based in Poland. But with the case of Britain, it's completely the other way around.
Right, as you said, a powerful president as well, which will obviously have some impact with other jurisdictions looking in this. But I said, interesting point about also targeting that naturalized citizen. That was important. So interesting things. Look, well, a lot of things we covered. Thanks so much for sharing your insights and expertise coming in. That was Dr. Przemysław Biskup. Appreciate your time.
Thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks here on TVP World. But stay tuned. World Global News Updates coming up with Claudia Czerwinska. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.